The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the desolate landscape. The small town of Black Hollow was known for two things: its annual international track and field competition, and the infamous Whispering Caves that loomed just outside the town. The caves were a place of legend, shrouded in mystery and fear. Locals whispered of strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and disappearances. No one dared to venture there after sunset. But for Jake Carter, the American runner on the brink of breaking the world record for the 100-meter dash, the caves were an irresistible lure. Jake had been sitting in his hotel room, restless and bored. The competition was tomorrow, and he needed something to distract him from the pressure. That's when the hotel staff member, a quiet man named Thomas, brought his dinner. As Thomas set the tray down, Jake noticed the man's nervous demeanor. His hands trembled slightly, and his eyes darted toward the window, where the silhouette of the caves was barely visible in the fading light. "What's out there?" Jake asked, nodding toward the window. Thomas hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "The Whispering Caves. You don't want to go there, sir, especially not after dark." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Why not? What's so special about them?" Thomas leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "People say the caves are haunted. Strange things happen there. Voices, shadows, things that shouldn't exist. No one who's gone in after sunset has ever come back the same." Jake smirked. He wasn't one to believe in ghost stories, but the idea of exploring something forbidden sparked his curiosity. As soon as Thomas left, Jake grabbed his flashlight and headed out. The evening air was cool, and the town was eerily quiet. He jogged toward the caves, his athletic instincts driving him forward. When he arrived, he saw a weathered sign that read, "Do not enter after sunset." Jake chuckled and ignored it. The entrance to the caves was a gaping maw of darkness, but his flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing jagged walls and a narrow path. The caves were beautiful in a haunting way, with strange rock formations that seemed to twist and coil like frozen waves. As he ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and the silence became oppressive. Then, he heard it, a voice, faint but unmistakable. It was calling his name. "Jake, Jake." He froze. The voice was coming from behind him, outside the caves. He turned and hurried back toward the entrance. Standing there was Thomas, the hotel staff member, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. "Mr. Carter, please, you must come back with me. It's not safe here," Thomas pleaded. Jake hesitated but nodded. "All right, give me a minute. I left my bag inside." He turned back into the caves, but when he emerged moments later, Thomas was gone. Jake shrugged, assuming the man had returned to the hotel out of fear. He made his way back, the strange encounter already fading from his mind. The next day was the final rehearsal before the competition. Jake felt confident, his body primed for the race. As he lined up at the starting block, he noticed something odd. The air felt heavier, and the crowd's cheers seemed distant, almost muffled. The starting gun fired, and Jake shot forward, his legs pumping with precision. But then he felt it, a presence running beside him, matching his speed perfectly. He glanced to his left, expecting to see another competitor, but what he saw made his blood run cold. A figure, pale and translucent, was running alongside him. Its face was twisted in a grotesque grin, its eyes hollow and endless. Jake's breath caught in his throat, and he stumbled, crashing to the ground. The first aid team rushed to him, but Jake was already scrambling to his feet, his face a mask of terror. He looked around wildly, but the ghostly figure was gone. The other runners and officials stared at him, confused and concerned. Jake tried to explain, but the words caught in his throat. How could he tell them he had seen a ghost? That night, Jake couldn't sleep. The image of the ghostly runner haunted him. He decided to return to the caves, convinced that the answers lay there. Armed with his flashlight, he ventured deep into the caverns, the walls closing in around him. The air grew colder, and the silence was deafening. Then, he saw it. A figure standing in the shadows. It was the ghost from the race, its hollow eyes fixed on him. Jake's flashlight flickered, and the figure began to move toward him, its movements unnaturally fluid. Jake turned to run, but the path behind him was gone, replaced by a solid wall of rock. The ghost spoke, its voice a chilling whisper. "You shouldn't have come back, Jake." Jake's heart pounded as he realized the truth. The ghost wasn't just a random apparition. It was the spirit of a runner who had died in the caves decades ago. A runner who had also been on the verge of breaking a world record. The caves had claimed him, and now they wanted Jake too. The next morning, the competition began, but Jake Carter was nowhere to be found. The officials searched everywhere, but he had vanished without a trace. The only clue was his flashlight, found at the entrance to the Whispering Caves. Years later, locals claimed to see a figure running near the caves at dusk, its form flickering like a shadow. They said it was Jake, forever trapped in a race he could never finish. And sometimes, if you listened closely, you could hear the faint echo of his name, carried on the wind. Jake. Jake. The caves had claimed another soul, and the mystery of the Whispering Caves remained unsolved, a chilling reminder of the price of curiosity